Most boards don't get live information between meetings. Over 50% don't get any information between meetings. The worst mistake that I see boards make when a crisis happens is that everybody decides that they want to suit up and get back into the game that they were in when they were an executive.
How do boards or companies mitigate the risk of a crisis?
The first thing to deal with in your board is
How do boards or companies mitigate the risk of a crisis? Like, is there a way to do that? Or is it just inevitable?
Yeah. So I've been talking to a lot of boards about that. So one of the things we found this in the study, but I know this as a board member, is that most boards don't get live information between meetings. So over 50% don't get any information between meetings. You have your 4 meetings a year if you're in the US, and you just get your pack the week before. You can't fend off a crisis that way. So I think the first thing to deal with in your board is what kind of transparency do you have and what kind of relationship do you have between meetings and conversations do you have between meetings with your executive in order to be able to understand what's going on without you having to be a pest and knocking on their door all the time. Because you don't want to distract them, but at the same time, you need to be able to be useful, and that means you need to be kind of on the money. Then there's kind of the governance structure around what information is actually useful to you. They don't need to tell you everything that they discuss in their executive meetings. They need to tell you what's going to help you make that resource allocation decision, what's going to help you make a geopolitical decision about what do we need to do with the supply chain, or what countries do we actually want to be operating in. And so when you get that rhythm, then the next level is, what kind of decision architecture do you have with your board? The worst mistake that I see boards make when a crisis happens is that everybody decides that they want to suit up and get back into the game that they were in when they were an executive. And now you're getting in the way. There's a whole set of people that you hired to do those jobs. And if you don't think you're up to them, then you need to hire a different set of people. But you should not be getting in the way.
And how do you mean getting in the way? Do you mean just creating more work for people?
Creating more work,
Yeah.
asking questions and demanding the answers come to you before the executive has time to process them. You set up a cadence, right? And you set up a set of people who are going to be there to make the decisions. Let's take a cyber crisis, for example. If you used to work as an IT professional, you probably don't need to suit up for this. You need to get the information and be the person who says, I've seen this many things before. Let me help you triage the decision of, should we pay ransom? What are the different things that can happen? But you don't need to actually involve yourself. As an advisor, I've seen it when boards involve themselves and they'll start shooting off emails to the advisors with their very strong opinions about what the executives should be doing. And it's just those sorts of things that create a little bit of chaos.
It's almost like a time waste. They're wasting time now.
They're wasting
and when you're in a
time.
crisis, surely it's a minute by minute, hour by hour.
Minute by
right?
minute. And
Yeah.
everybody needs to know where they're most useful. So that's what I mean about, there's what I call decision architecture. Everybody knows if you set up the roles before the crisis happens, and that means you need to actually do some scenario planning and some rehearsals with each other. If you do that, then people know where they're supposed to play. The reason why people get involved isn't to meddle. It's because they feel like they're at a loss for being useful and they want to help things move as fast as possible. It's an effort to be helpful. Let's help each other understand where we're most helpful by setting that up in advance.
What's your advice for, you talked about scenario planning. What's your advice for board members if they're not doing any scenario planning? Should they ask about it? Like, do we have a plan for X or Y happening? What should a board member do?
Yes, I think you should ask what's the plan and how does that actually incorporate the board members' views and when we play. A lot of times we would encourage boards to set aside some time in their strategy days in order for them to actually do a bit of that together. You can bring in an expert if it's an area in which nobody in the board has an experience. So it could be in consultancy, but it can be an individual expert that you're bringing in who can help triage things. I've sat on some of my boards where we've brought in an academic, for example, who's actually been studying something that we're really interested in. And in the UK was water industry reform, because we were going through a period where the government was looking at that. And so we brought in someone to help us think about what are the things that we're going to go to the government and ask for as they're thinking about water industry reform, and what is actually happening across different markets that we should know about in order for us to be a little bit more influential. So there are set pieces during the year when you can do this, but don't just wait for that if it's 12 months from now. See if you can set aside time with the chair to talk to the CEO about how we can actually put together something to make sure that the board is as tooled up and as not just tooled up, but as ready as possible to tackle the unexpected.